They called it the wedding of the year. My husband Derek in a tux worth more than my annual salary before I met him. His new bride in a dress I helped design. And the house? The one shimmering behind them on the live stream? Still legally mine. They didn't know that, not yet. But I watched it all, sipping wine from a balcony they thought I abandoned. Let them smile. Let them toast. Because once she opens the master closet and sees what I left hanging there, everything changes. This isn't a story of heartbreak. It's a blueprint of strategic silence. When Derek proposed, it wasn't on a beach or under fireworks. It was in the boardroom of his family's foundation, with a ring I later learned belonged to his grandmother. He said it symbolized legacy. I believed him. I thought I was being folded into something sacred, into history, tradition, love wrapped in wealth. The Sanders name would be added to theirs, and maybe, finally, I'd feel like I belonged somewhere that didn't need me to fix it. The house we moved into was older than the state we lived in. Chandeliers, imported marble, custom molding in every corner. But it wasn't just a house. It was a museum, curated by generations of his bloodline. And as his wife, I became part of the exhibit. At first, everything looked perfect. Sunday brunches with his mother, quiet dinners where Derek would stroke my hand and say, "See, you're what this family needed." I was photographed next to him at charity events, quoted in business magazines. I made it. I was their proof that they were progressive, that they could welcome someone like me. One morning, Derek handed me a key. It was delicate, engraved with our initials and the date of our wedding. "It's the master key," he said, "to every door in this house." I cried. I held that key like a promise. It wasn't until weeks later, when I tried to open the cedar door at the end of the east wing, that I realized it didn't fit. None of the doors beyond the main floor accepted it. I laughed it off at first. Maybe it was the wrong one. But the more I tested, the more doors refused me. I asked Derek casually, but he waved it off. "That wing's off limits. Too many renovations. You wouldn't like it." Later that night, I heard footsteps from that very hall. 2 voices, his mother's and Derek's, laughing. Still, I convinced myself it was nothing. We were happy, weren't we? Then came the gala. It was a fundraiser for women in tech, something I had helped organize. I gave a speech about female empowerment, standing proudly beside Derek. After the event, I went to the green room to pick up my coat and found Derek's phone buzzing on the table. I never snooped. I never had a reason to. But that night, I did. There was an email open on the screen from his mother. Subject line, "Final version of the family trust contract." I didn't open the file. I forwarded it to myself. I waited until I was alone in my office. Lights dimmed, wine in hand. The contract was 27 pages long, marked "Confidential Internal Family Record." The clauses were methodical, cold. Each one listed stipulations about preserving the family's assets, reputation, and image. There was an entire section on marriage partnerships. Emily Sanders, categorized as PR integration asset. I read that line 5 times. It continued. Marriage entered for public-facing compliance to equality funding criteria. Non-voting position within estate governance. Property ownership remains with primary bloodline holders. I wasn't his wife. I was a proof of concept. I scrolled through my wedding photos later that night, trying to find something, anything, that proved our love had been real. But every picture looked staged. I could almost hear his mother behind the camera saying, "Tilt your head more, smile, that's it." Derek returned home late, kissed me on the cheek, and didn't notice that I didn't kiss back. Days passed. I began noticing patterns I'd ignored before. Derek never called me by pet names. His mother always introduced me as our Emily, not my daughter-in-law. His sister never spoke to me without first glancing at Derek. The housekeepers called me Miss, not Ma'am. The mirror didn't shatter all at once. It cracked slowly, splintering with each truth I uncovered. One night I stood outside that east wing door again. I held the key he gave me, the symbolic token of trust, and let it fall. The clink it made on the marble floor was hollow. I realized then I'd never had access, not to the house, not to him, not to the life I thought I was building. She was the narrative, not the character. I didn't know who said it first. Maybe it was written in the contract. Maybe I made it up. But it echoed through me like prophecy. I started keeping secrets of my own, not out of spite, out of necessity, because I had played their game for years. And now, I was learning the rules they never thought I'd understand. The day I stopped attending events wasn't marked by a meltdown or dramatic confrontation. I simply told Derek I was exhausted, that maybe, this time, his mother should take the spotlight. He didn't argue. He barely looked up from his tablet. And just like that, I vanished from his public calendar, but not from the world. I asked my best friend, Ava, to do something bold. We had always shared a likeness, same build, same hair, same cadence when we walked. So when she stepped in for me at a gallery opening, wearing my dress, my heels, my smile, no one questioned it. The press captured photos of me admiring a painting with Derek, and I watched the entire charade from my phone, curled up in sweats with a mug of tea. No one noticed the switch. Not Derek, not his mother, not the vultures in pearls who clung to the family's every PR move. The truth was simple. I had become a fixture, interchangeable, forgettable in my own life. And I would use that to my advantage. I started a podcast under a pseudonym, Dr. E, a voice-only series about identity, manipulation, and the illusions we build for love. It gained traction fast. I shared nothing specific, yet everything was real. Each episode was a breadcrumb for those paying attention. With every event I skipped and every press photo Ava faked, I studied patterns. Who asked about me? Who didn't? What kind of narrative emerged when I wasn't there to defend or define myself? The results were telling. Derek framed my absence as noble. She's focusing on her research. His mother said I was resting after working so hard for the family. They had scripts for my silence, and I let them use them. Meanwhile, I tested boundaries. I accessed our smart home dashboard and noted which rooms were entered, at what times, and by whom. Derek always visited the study after midnight. His sister spent hours in the wine cellar but never drank. The staff rotated on patterns that didn't make sense, unless someone was staging appearances. I wasn't watching to be paranoid. I was gathering, preparing, not for a fight, for precision. One night, I logged into Derek's business server using credentials I had memorized months ago when he left his laptop open during a meeting. I wasn't interested in his files, not directly. I was looking for the infrastructure, the skeleton of his empire. What I found was fragile, overbuilt, over-controlled, too many gates and not enough locks. I installed a secondary access point, a ghost port hidden beneath layers of benign code. From there, I began mapping everything, every investor note, calendar, invite, voice memo. I didn't steal, I copied, I duplicated. I made mirrors of their world and hung them in a room only I could enter. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how shallow their genius was. Derek's intelligence came not from vision, but from alignment. He surrounded himself with the right names and faces, then let them speak while he signed the deals. His mother orchestrated more than he admitted. His sister, once cast as unstable, managed offshore accounts that could unravel everything. I wasn't scared. I was exhilarated. Each data point became part of what I began calling their digital DNA. Habits, secrets, inconsistencies coded into patterns. What time Derek lied the easiest? What phrases his mother used to redirect suspicion? How the thermostat rose whenever his sister was alone in the kitchen, signaling stress she didn't verbalize. I created profiles, not just of their behaviors, but of their blind spots. By then, I wasn't hiding. I was hunting. One afternoon, Derek walked into my study and commented on how peaceful I seemed. "You've really found your rhythm," he said, brushing my shoulder. I was worried for a while. I smiled. "Thank you. I just needed a new routine. He nodded, satisfied, and left. He didn't realize I had just triggered a silent command from my phone, instructing the house's AI to log every sound in the East Wing for the next 24 hours. Control wasn't about shouting. It was about shaping silence. And in silence, I had built a war room. Ava, meanwhile, continued playing the part. We created moments of me that aligned with Derek's fabricated updates. Brunches, charity teas, design consultations. I was more present in absence than I had ever been in presence. And I was learning every day. They thought I had retreated, that I was too delicate to confront betrayal. But this wasn't retreat, it was rerouting. By the end of that month, I knew what they valued, what they feared, and most importantly, what they never saw coming. Me. 2 weeks. That was all it took for Derek to parade his new love interest to the world. No period of mourning, no pretense of decency. Just 2 weeks after I quietly stepped out of the spotlight, he posted a carousel of images. Her hand in his, champagne glasses clinking, and finally, a ring. My ring? No. This one was louder, flashier, hollow. The caption read, "She said yes, again life gives you second chances." The comments were split between heart emojis and thinly veiled confusion. So fast? Wait, what happened to Emily? Did I miss something? No one had missed anything. That was the point. He made sure no official announcement came from our side. Just a soft fade, a whisper of rebranding. Derek liked stories he could narrate. Their wedding was streamed live, an obnoxious fusion of old money aesthetics and influencer culture, a perfect collision of legacy and clout, 3 million viewers, a trending hashtag. Drones hovered over the estate, capturing shots of the manicured lawn, the violinists in blush pink, the kiss under the marble arch. The marble arch I chose for our anniversary garden. I didn't attend, of course, but I watched and smiled. They had their ceremony in the same estate, the same house that was still legally 80% mine. Derek had never updated the property deed. Why would he? He thought I wouldn't care. My gift arrived precisely at noon, signed by the previous occupant. A white box, velvet-lined, inside of which sat a state-of-the-art smart home control system. The note read, "Thought you might want a little more control than he'll ever give you." They thought it was a joke. A passive-aggressive flourish from a discarded wife. They were wrong. The system came preloaded. I had embedded a secondary command interface, hidden beneath the core architecture, one I could access at will, not to spy on their love life. I had no interest in that. I wanted context, real-time reactions, private conversations, and mostly, I wanted them to forget that silence doesn't mean absence. The bride, her name was Lila, was younger than me, brighter, curated. Her Instagram was an exhibition, color-coded outfits, matcha in soft morning light, Derek's hand always just out of frame. She was trained for this role, and she played it well, until the first glitch. It started when she opened the master closet. She found a silk blouse with my initials embroidered near the collar, a necklace in a drawer with a tag from Derek, a journal tucked inside a shoebox. Not mine anymore, just empty pages I had left behind. The corners were creased from frequent use. She confronted Derek. He brushed it off. Coincidence. Emily must have left a few things. The staff should have cleared it. But the unease had been planted. That night, through the camera embedded in the closet's light fixture, I watched their argument unfold. "She's still here," Lila said, pacing. "In this house. Her scent. Her name on everything." Derek didn't respond right away. Then calmly he said, "She was never meant to stay. We just needed her to start." I leaned in. Lila's voice trembled. "Start what?" "The brand. The pitch. You know. It's easier to secure gender equity funding with the right face. Emily had credentials. She legitimized things, but that part's done." She exited quietly. She was supposed to. The next day, I released a video, not to the public, Not yet. I uploaded it to a hidden forum, one I knew would go viral on its own. I didn't need to feed the fire, I just had to flick the match. The footage was crisp. Clean audio. Derek post-wedding in bed, shirtless, casually recounting the strategy. Emily was the scaffolding. We couldn't pitch family legacy without a strong, educated female lead. She checked every box. No sex, no scandalous imagery, just cold, calculated manipulation. The internet lost its mind. The real wife never left, one commenter wrote. Another added, she played the long game, and he never saw it. Memes spread. Billionaire's Bride 2.0 became a tag. Think pieces exploded across platforms. Derek tried to deny the clip's authenticity, but too many tech-savvy users verified the metadata. It was unedited, unfaked. Lila deleted her social media. Their joint wedding account vanished overnight. By the weekend, Derek issued a statement, fumbling through excuses, praising Emily's continued strength and privacy. Too late. I stayed silent, because silence had always been my sharpest knife. They wanted to rewrite the narrative. But I owned the stage, and I wasn't done directing. They called it the Betrayal of the Year. Not Derek's betrayal, mine. After the video leaked, support came pouring in. But so did scrutiny. Comment sections, once full of sympathy, fractured. Some called me a genius. Others called me manipulative, vindictive, cruel. Headlines swung like pendulums. Wife outsmarts billionaire husband versus calculated queen or cold conspirator. People debated not just my actions, but my morality. I wasn't just a woman anymore. I was a symbol, and symbols don't get to be human. For days, I said nothing. Then I went live. One stream, 15 minutes. No background music, no fancy lighting. Just me, seated in the very room where Derek's grandmother used to embroider tapestries. The camera was steady. My tone? Unflinching. I said, "You want to know why I stayed silent? Because I didn't want to become the headline. But since I already am..." I reached for an old journal, leather-bound, yellowing at the edges. It had belonged to Derek's mother, and in it, her handwriting danced like shadows. I read a single passage. "Marrying into this family is like wearing a crown of thorns. We're allowed to shine but never speak, smile but never shape. I was their first sacrifice." I closed the book, and that was it. The stream ended, but the fire didn't. The quote went viral. People dissected it line by line. Overnight, I wasn't just the first wife. I became a reflection, an emotional mirror for every woman who'd ever been silenced, shaped, or used as a stepping stone. My inbox overflowed with messages. Survivors, fighters, daughters of matriarchal silence. But while the world watched the screen, I focused on the shadows. I turned my attention to Derek's empire. I had built a map, contracts, investors, secret negotiations masked under philanthropic fronts. And one by one, I released them. Not all at once, not like a bomb, but like poison in the well. A leaked email here. A boardroom voice note there. Carefully timed, each drop contradicted the PR narrative Derek had built. Ethical innovation, family-led integrity, future-facing legacy. The truth was uglier. Fabricated product claims, paid-off reviewers, silent settlements. I exposed it all, but I never posted a single thing under my name. The internet did it for me. Reddit threads dissected every document. TikTok sleuths mapped timelines and traced connections. Twitter exploded with screenshots and callouts. I simply watched. Review sites were flooded with one-star complaints. Influencers who once praised Derek's company began distancing themselves. A former intern came forward claiming she'd been told to keep quiet and wear heels. Meanwhile, Derek spiraled. His social media team tried damage control, but their posts felt rehearsed, sterile. He released a video apology, sitting in a designer chair with perfect lighting, mouthing words he didn't believe. "Regret is a lesson," he said, "and I'm learning." But no one cared. The public had seen too much. Lila, the second bride, vanished from his side. No statements, no explanations. Her silence was more damning than any press release. And still, I said nothing more. Silence, again, became my strategy. What no one realized was that the damage wasn't spontaneous. It was surgical. I had spent months studying his weak points, the partnerships most vulnerable to scandal, the vendors who demanded silence in exchange for loyalty, the buried clauses that, once exposed, made investors disappear overnight. But my final move wasn't digital. It was legal. Through a company I registered overseas, clean, untraceable, housed under a different surname, I submitted an acquisition offer for Derek's property development arm. The company was desperate by then, bleeding cash and credibility. They took the deal. The papers were signed on a Thursday. By Monday, I owned the house. Not just the house, the brand. The entire wing of his business that managed heritage estates, luxury venues, and wedding experiences. He still lived there, still hosted meetings, still walked past the arch where he said vows to 2 women he never loved. He didn't know. Not yet. I didn't send flowers. I didn't send keys. I just replaced one painting in the main hall. The oil portrait of his great-grandfather, once symbol of their empire. In its place, I hung a black mirror, unframed, untitled. When Derek finally noticed it, he stared at his own reflection for a full minute. The house didn't echo with sound, but it screamed with consequence. It began with a magazine cover, my face, half in light, half in shadow. The headline, "The Queen of Quiet Power." A profile that painted me as enigmatic, strategic, unbreakable. They called me a master of image, a new archetype. The woman who didn't fight fire with fire, but with silence, and won. Interviews flooded in, invitations to panels, to awards, to summits. I declined most of them, not because I didn't have something to say, but because I had learned the value of restraint. Let them interpret. Let them project. Silence made room for myth, but myth has a cost. I couldn't walk down the street without being recognized. People whispered, stared, some cheered, some spat. I wasn't a woman anymore. I was a story, walking in skin, one that didn't belong to me. Security teams followed me now, not by request, but by necessity. There were threats, anonymous notes, slashed tires, drones outside my balcony. I had become a lightning rod for everything, for female rage, for moral ambiguity, for society's obsession with power reclaimed. They didn't want me to be human. They wanted me to be exact, sharp enough to admire, distant enough to not threaten their own reflection. Then came the letter. It was handwritten, mailed, not emailed, slipped in among thousands of fan messages. It stood out because it was so plain. Dear Dr. Sanders, I'm 17. I live in Michigan. I followed everything since the beginning. People say what you did was manipulative, but I think it was brilliant. I just wanted to say, I wish I could be like you. Strong, alone, unafraid, not loving anyone. That seems safer. Sincerely, Maya. I read it 3 times. Then I cried. Not the dramatic, cinematic tears, just slow, quiet grief. Because somewhere along the way, the message changed. I didn't want to teach girls not to love. I didn't want to glorify detachment. I wanted freedom, yes, but I never meant for that to become isolation. And yet, wasn't that what I had built? A fortress so high no one could climb it. A system so perfect, even I couldn't escape it now. At the same time, a new narrative emerged, one I didn't write, but couldn't ignore. An international organization, one that fought media manipulation and influence systems, published a white paper. Its title, The God Mask, The Rise of Ethical Control. Inside, my name appeared 17 times. They praised the intelligence of my strategy, but warned of its replication. They said I had created a blueprint, one that could be used to justify any form of soft domination. That, in weaponizing silence, I had built a cult of personality, that I had introduced a new problem, benevolent manipulation. It stung, not because they were wrong, but because it was true. In every system I exposed, I had built a cleaner version. Derek's empire collapsed, and mine quietly took its place. More transparent, more responsive, but still a structure, a hierarchy. And I was at the top. Was it different just because I was smarter? Because I had been hurt first? When Derek used me as a face, I called it exploitation. When I used my own myth to rewrite my life, what was that? The question lingered like smoke. I couldn't answer it. Not honestly. One evening, I sat on the same balcony I watched his wedding from. The estate was now mine, officially, legally, quietly. I had changed almost nothing, not out of sentiment, but out of something worse, satisfaction. I wanted the walls to remember. I wanted the floorboards to creak with his memory. But that wasn't power. That was poison disguised as preservation. I didn't need his ghosts anymore. I had my own. The next morning, I shut down the media wing of my company. No announcement, just internal memos. I restructured everything. Redirected funds to grassroots platforms run by women who weren't architects of narrative, but raw, real, untrained. They were messy and honest and brave in ways I had forgotten how to be. I sat with the board. I told them I would no longer be the face of anything, not a campaign, not a cause, not even my own legacy. One executive asked, "But what about the message?" I said, "Let them write it themselves." It wasn't about humility. It was about release. I visited Maya's school. I didn't announce it. I didn't bring cameras. I asked her principal if I could sit in her media studies class as a guest. I listened, not as a mentor, but as a woman unmasked. Afterward, I gave Maya a copy of the original journal, the one from Derek's mother. She held it like it was made of glass. I told her, "Don't be like me, be freer than me." And for the first time in a long while, I meant it. The headlines shifted again, from queen to ghost, from mastermind to memory, but that was the plan. I didn't need to be remembered. I needed to stop performing, and that meant taking off the mask, even the one made of gold. It was Lila who reached out first, a simple message, clean and unassuming. "I think we've both worn the same costume. Can we talk?" We met in a bookstore, not far from the city, in the back corner where no one cared about headlines. She was different, stripped of gloss, her voice quieter, her movement slower, as if the role she'd played had finally slipped from her skin. "I used to think you were dangerous," she said without accusation. "I was," I replied, "but only because I was taught silence was the only safety." She nodded. "Same." We didn't compare scars, we compared strategies, not to win but to understand. Two women who had lived in someone else's myth, finally writing their own. "I don't want revenge," she said. "I want clarity for myself, for girls like Maya." So did I. Together we drafted a plan, one that didn't involve dismantling a man but the entire infrastructure that gave him power in the first place. We created a media initiative. Not under my name, not under hers, but under a new banner, unscripted. The goal wasn't perfection. It was contradiction, vulnerability, unpolished voices. We funded workshops, community-run channels, and anonymous storytelling platforms where identity wasn't currency. It was context. For the first time, I didn't lead. I supported. The transition was seamless. I handed over the reins of my media academy to a former student, brilliant, radical, unafraid to disagree with me. She changed the motto on day one. We don't teach power, we teach presence. I couldn't have written it better. In the press release announcing the leadership change, I declined to be quoted. The final paragraph was a simple line of closure. I broke the mirror, but not the girl inside. I stepped back, not in shame. Not in exile, in peace. I returned to the estate once more, this time without security, without cameras, without anything but a small key. There was one room I had never entered, not fully. A glass room at the end of the east wing, once locked, once forbidden. The one Derek had claimed was under renovation, the one I was told I wouldn't like. The key slid in, easier than I expected. The door opened without resistance. It wasn't a dungeon. It wasn't some secret lab of betrayal. It was just a room, lined with mirrors, floor to ceiling, aged but not broken. A single chair sat in the center, and in front of it, a small steel safe built into the floor. I knew the code. Inside was the wedding dress I wore, still pressed, still pristine. The paper tag with the tailor's name still stitched beneath the hem. Next to it, folded carefully, was the original copy of our prenup, unsigned, the final page still waiting for my initials. But what made my hands tremble wasn't the dress or the document. It was the envelope beneath them, yellowed with time. On the front, for Emily, only if you stay. It was from Derek's grandmother, the one who smiled too wide and said too little, the one everyone believed had died docile, domesticated, devoted. The letter was short. I know what they've done. I know the pattern. I tried to warn his mother. She smiled and said, "That's how families grow. You have two choices, escape or rewrite. Both come with a cost." I chose silence. You won't. I see it in your spine, in the way you pause before answering questions. You're not from this place, and that is your strength. If you read this, you stayed. God help them. I folded the letter slowly as if it were glass. Then I stood. The mirrors didn't distort, they didn't multiply, they didn't lie. For the first time, the woman staring back wasn't Emily the symbol, or Emily the strategist, or Emily the ex-wife. Just Emily, not fractured, not filtered, whole.